Even if the update is this is an active investigation, we don't have any information yet, but we are working with the police department. That's better than not responding. They don't want to say no comment. That's the worst thing, because the story is going to happen with or without them. It's not going to go away because they're not answering the phone.
You're listening to Stories from the Top, an inside guide to better business development. All right, we're here with Leza Raffel. Leza, you're the founder of Communication Solutions Group. For those who don't know who you are, can you just introduce your business?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we are a full-service public relations and marketing firm. We typically focus on strategic communications. We do quite a bit of crisis communications, but I always feel the need to tell my clients we do a lot of good news too. So we have kind of earned our stripes in crisis communications, but we've done plenty of ribbon cuttings, groundbreakings, business launches, etc.
Great. So how did you get started in this? Was this something you went to school for? Or?
Well, so it's interesting. So I did go to school for communications. I went to Ithaca College, and I'm actually a professional in residence there. I get to go back and speak and teach students about public relations. But I actually started my company literally out of a crisis. So I was director of public relations at a marketing firm. And every other week when it was time to get paid before direct deposit, they would hand me a check and they'd say, "You're not going to deposit this, are you?" And that made it a little difficult because I had rent to pay, I had to eat, and I had paychecks that were bouncing. And I had been working very closely with the clients, helping them develop their group of clients. And I went and I asked my friend Caroline, who is also my lawyer, can I leave this place, start my own business, and go after these clients? And she said, "Did you ever sign a non-compete agreement?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Go for it." So off I went, and I pursued those clients. It's really not a very glamorous story in the beginning. I only had 3 clients. I was pretty broke. My income my first year was $9,000. I didn't have a car. I took public transportation everywhere. And I just on a shoestring really started to grow the business, added more. I guess I had started the business in, a September. And I guess 4 months in, I was able to hire my first part-time employee. Then I was able to make her full-time. So it kind of grew from there.
Did you have any business experience? Like, how was the business side
No,
of things?
I broke all the rules, right? I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have a line of credit yet. I didn't have any of that. Those are all the things you're supposed to have, right? But I just had a strong sales ability. I was a really strong writer. I liked to network. I would literally run from networking event to networking event. Don't forget, I was taking public transportation, so there was a lot of subways and my feet. And then, I just kind of learned. I joined a couple business organizations. I took some classes at the Wharton Small Business Development Center, and I just kind of learned, how, you're supposed to build things, what you're supposed to do. I learned, I need to find an accountant. I need to do this. And And then just last year, we got the Soaring 76 Award from the Philadelphia Business Journal, which is the 76 fastest growing privately held companies between 2020 to 2022. Prior to that, we had gotten the Philly 100 twice. So, we've grown pretty well, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, now that you have your own business, do you have your employees sign not-compete forms?
It's like 16 pages. Yeah, it's a really long document. They have to sign it before they come in. And I once had to actually use it and, take legal action against somebody. So yeah, it's a pretty good document. It's written in lawyer-y, so of course none of us can understand it, but the lawyers can.
So you were kind of just jumping in. You saw some opportunities to help people with PR and marketing stuff.
Yeah.
Did you have a vision to kind of become this first responder, public service type of
No, I think I was
niche?
pretty lean in the beginning. I'm like, okay, my first three clients were a water-based physical therapy center, a financial consultant, and a little tiny Montessori school. Those were my three clients. And then what happened with the little Montessori school was I read a newspaper article, because this was before online when we were all reading newspapers. And I saw that a school district was looking to outsource their public relations and marketing. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go pursue that. So I walked in with my little tiny portfolio of this very small Montessori school, which literally they were paying us $350 a month. I mean, they were really small. And somehow I landed the school district. So I thought, I'd like to do some more school districts. So I joined the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, which is the trade association, started exhibiting there, got more school districts from there. School districts always have a crisis. There's always some bus accident or controversial firing or some sexting scandal. And so we started to get more and more crisis work, to the point that like school districts would just call us and say, hey, I have a crisis. I didn't even, necessarily know who they were. So that became a good niche. And then, one of my employees said, municipalities do a really bad job communicating. We should go after municipalities. So we started exhibiting at their conferences and really grew our municipalities. The municipality work turned into some first responder work. So we started to do a lot of fire companies. I partnered with an association management company. So we started to do a lot of associations, professional associations and trade associations. So attention deficit disorder, transplant, surgeons, unfinished wood furnishing companies. So literally I could go anywhere and start a conversation at any cocktail party, pretty much about anything.
So I'm curious to know a little bit more about the definition of crisis work. So
Okay.
Can you give an explanation of that?
Yeah, so it certainly has intensified because of social media. Like back in the day, you had, the news cycle to respond because the news wasn't going to break until 6 o'clock and the newspaper wasn't going to come out till the next day. But of course, right now, everything goes online. So for our clients, it's really, they need to focus on the crisis. So let's use a controversial, let me try and use, let's say like an accidental death. Okay, that's kind of bad, right? Accidental death is bad, especially if it happens at a school. So the school district has to deal with that, right? They have to be providing crisis support. They're working with the police. There's all this stuff they have to do. At the same time, the media wants to know. They hear what's going on their police scanners. People are texting about it. Kids in the classroom are texting about it. The faculty is talking about it. You need to get your message out right away. But they're busy dealing with the crisis. So they'll call us, we'll work on the message, we'll work on what needs to be said. A lot of times it's who needs to know now, the most urgent, who's the audience that needs to know.
So they're calling you within like minutes or hours of this happening?
Yeah, it's minutes. It's minutes within the time that it happens. So then we mobilize. We might be working back and forth with their attorney or the police department. Even if it's still under investigation and they don't have enough details, they at least want to say they're providing counseling services. They're, aware of the situation, that they're doing things to help people process it and deal with it. They don't want to say no comment. That's the worst thing because the story is going to happen with or without them. So it's not going to go away because they're not answering the phone. So, we will work on the messaging for that, the communication. We'll get updates out. Even if the update is this is an active investigation, we don't have any information yet, but we are working with the police department. That's better than not responding.
As social media is getting more and more popular and spreading, have you found that the PR side of things is easier now with things getting buried quicker in the faster news cycle?
So it gets a little bit more challenging because you have these hyper local social media sites that people will go on and they'll just start like their own rumor mill and then they'll share them. So there's so many more outlets that you have to go to. Some of my clients on principle refuse to go to those sites. They're like, I will not legitimize them by posting anything. And I have to explain to them, this is where people are getting their information, and it's really inaccurate. So let's carry that link over to the frequently asked questions or the myths versus facts, and let's get that on there. And if they absolutely refuse to go, I'll go and I'll put it on there.
You're
but
talking
it needs
about
to be
the,
there.
the Facebook My Town
Yeah,
groups and
that's
things
exactly
like that.
right. Yeah, you have to address that. So yeah, it's getting. I mean, it's easier in terms of getting the good news out now because there are so many media outlets, right? There's electronic, there's podcasts, there's these hyper local sites, there's e-newsletters, there's traditional print, so there's plenty of ways that you can go. You can record your own stuff, right, and push it out. So that makes it much easier in terms of getting the visibility. But on the crisis side, there's so many more outlets that you have to make sure you hit to confirm accuracy.
What's the general strategy when something bad happens and we have to go and say something? Like, what is
we usually have a plan in place. So most of our clients, the media know that we're their communications department. So we typically, the calls often will come to us because someone will hear it on the police scanner. But hopefully our client calls us first. And I actually just dealt with this. I won't name the district, but there was a DUI in a school district this weekend, and the faculty member that had the DUI hit another car. So there was a lot of stuff that had to be, so they called me on a Sunday morning. We worked on the communication for that. So, but media typically knows, they know who we work with. Sometimes they don't know who we work with, and they think we work for every, school district. They'll call us, and we'll find out what their deadline is, and then we'll get our information together. If it's if it's a legal issue, we'll run it by the lawyer, and then we'll put it out on the district's behalf. I'm usually not the one standing behind the microphone during a press conference. I don't really think that's appropriate. I'll look at who the key person is. If it's a transportation issue, a bus accident, it should probably be someone from the transportation department, which means that we also, in slower times, we do a lot of media training because we want to make sure people are prepared for this stuff. Or if there's just someone that really has no business being in front of a camera, I will tell the client, like, no, we are not putting Joe Schmo in front of the camera. Let's pick out somebody else. So, and then it's really important that we put closure on the crisis. So let's say it's a bomb scare, right? And you're out there, you're letting people know we're in lockdown, there's a bomb scare. Now you find out that it was a false alarm, everything's fine. You have to go back and put closure on this, right? Because if you go to their website, if you go to social media, all you see is this lingering bomb threat. You've never resolved the fact that it was a false alarm, everything's fine, classes are back in session. So we're making sure that the loop is closed at the end.
So how many different outlets are you putting communications out on?
So once again, it depends upon the nature of the crisis. So I'll give you an example. Many years ago, a school district called me and said there was a cleaning agent in our frying machine in the elementary school, and all the kids are potentially going to get sick. Should we hold a press conference? And I said, no, let's talk about who needs to know. All the parents in the school whose kids ate the food that day. That's who needs to know. So let's get an email blast out to those parents or the robocall. Let's let them know what's going on. You don't need a press conference for that. So very often it's who needs to know, right? There's no need to over communicate. I remember many years ago in a school newsletter, a superintendent wanted to put an article in about a lice outbreak in a kindergarten class, but it was this one kindergarten class. Why would this go out to the entire community? It doesn't belong there. So,
yeah. So is that type of service, the PR stuff, is that kind of like a retainer model where you're just on standby?
Yeah, so for most of our school districts and a lot of our other clients, we are their communications department. So their newsletters come out of our office, their annual reports. We have administrative access to their social media, so we're posting all the great things on there, and we're posting the crisis stuff on there. We're sometimes part of their cabinet meeting, so if there's something that's going to happen that's going to be very unpopular, like closing a beloved school or tax increase, we'll be part of the meeting. We'll learn that along with the rest of the cabinet so we could start planning the communication strategy. So we are that department.
And how did you develop that kind of model? Was that something just over time it organically evolved into that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it started many years ago in the Cheltenham School District, and then it moved on, and we did it for the Council Rock School District for 5 years. And then at that point, that became a very appealing model to school districts because they don't have to pay our health insurance, our benefits. They can make it a 10-month contract, an 11-month contract. And when money is lean, it costs less than a full-time hire, and they have a whole communications department. So for quite a few of our school districts, that's a much better alternative for them.
So do you focus mainly on governmental agencies, or are there private businesses as well?
No, we work with private businesses. We do a lot of business to business. So we've worked with engineering companies, we work with construction companies, we've worked with healthcare providers. I guess that's business to consumer, obviously, in that case. We don't do a ton of retail. We don't really do not that they're not fun, but we don't really do restaurants or gift shops. My enjoyment is really taking stuff that's a little bit more complicated and helping people, understand it. Like, what does this engineering company do? Why is this so important? What is this medical procedure? What is it, what is the process like? Why is this different than this other medical procedure? So, my staff, we're all, writers. I think we're really good at taking things that are pretty complicated or confusing and helping people understand its benefits. And I think we enjoy that a little bit more than the playful, this is why this is the gift basket of the month sort of thing.
So you have found your niche that you just enjoy working with, and you try to stick to that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I really do. I think we're really good with things that are complicated, confusing, and controversial. We could take the most, the most complicated thing, whether it's, an aspect involving organ transplant. And really, we did this great paper piece once in New Jersey about the primary care desert, why there was such a dire shortage of primary care physicians in New Jersey, and all the data that spoke to that. And that was a really fun project for us to work on.
So did you have a communications campaign to try to get more primary care doctors in New Jersey?
Well, the clients were primary care doctors already, and they were kind of lobbying for more insurance coverage. At the time, that was kind of their initiative. So, many years ago, I worked with, it was a Society of Health System Pharmacists. They were the pharmacists in the hospitals, and they wanted patients in the hospital to know that you could literally request that the hospital pharmacist come upstairs and talk to you about your medication. It was their way of making sure they were being covered for cognitive services. So that was the whole awareness campaign.
What would you say the breakdown is between marketing and PR stuff that you guys do?
Well, so PR falls under the marketing umbrella. It's really important to know that. So there's marketing, and we do all of that. We do, primary marketing in the form of focus groups, stakeholder surveys, electronic surveys. We do all of that. And a lot of times from that data, we're okay, this is what the data says. Now let's use this to develop your brand, okay? People don't realize that you have this service. This is very true of associations. What you think is your strongest member benefit, only 38% of your members know that you offer it. So, hey, we need a campaign to really promote this membership benefit more. So let's, weave it into your e-newsletter. Let's do some video testimonials about it. Let's relaunch it, right? So that all ends up, let's put it out in your industry publications and spotlight it. So all that is marketing, right? And then PR is one component of it. I enjoy that component of it. I guess I would be inaccurate if I said all we do is PR, because we're constantly creating, white papers and annual reports and newsletters.
So how did you develop all the different pricing and packages for so many different crazy. Like, a focus group is totally different than being on call for PR.
Yeah. I mean, I just started developing models over the years. Sometimes I feel like I'm probably due for a price increase because sometimes I'll look and I'll be like, God, this is I haven't done this project for this client for like 6 years, and I can't believe I just charged them the same rate. I guess I should be revisiting my prices. I feel like there's a competitive advantage to us because we are in the suburbs. We're not one of those, we have really nice furniture, but we're not one of those fancy center city agencies where you're paying for the fact that, we're in center city.
Yeah.
So I feel like our pricing model seems to be reasonable. And I always say to people, like, is this an all or nothing proposal? Absolutely not. Let's talk about our scope of work and where we could reduce things. Some are, more urgent than others, right? Like your website design is, if you don't want to drive people to a website that is archaic and not functioning, you need a really compelling website before you drive people to the website. I mean, that's what we say to our fire companies. I always say, all roads for volunteer recruitment lead to your website. So we've got to get the branding together. We've got to get that website up and dynamic and looking fabulous before we do the social media, the lawn signs, the PR, the videos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It all drives into that.
It all
website.
goes there.
We preach the same message here.
Yeah. There was a guy who came in the other day who was talking to us like, hey, I want to get some people on Facebook. I don't have a website. My Facebook is my website. And I looked at his Facebook. He didn't have like a cover photo. I was like, all right, either have us fix this or you go fix this and then let's talk. Because we're not driving anybody anywhere until there's...
Well, and so like I see that with some, we work with a lot of volunteer fire companies, and a lot of times I'll say to them, well, let's check out your website. And like, it hasn't been updated for like 10 years. And the link that says why volunteer, if you could find it, is down. And it's like, okay, like let's do something about this before we actually move on to anything else here. So
do you guys develop websites internally?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we'll have this branding session. It's this visioning. I do this with all of our clients. It's this visioning session because I don't think it's appropriate for us as a marketing company to march in and say, ta-da, this is your brand. Like, what do we know? Especially with the fire companies. I'm not saving lives in their community running into buildings. So we have this visioning session. They're all there. They talk about like, what keeps them volunteering. And I always ask them, this is always a great question, like how would the community describe you? But then my favorite is, how would other fire companies in the area describe you? And sometimes it's really bad, and sometimes they'd say, we have the best equipment, the best training, second to none, and they would all say that. And so that's really good to know. One once said they would describe us as dysfunctional. That was kind of a problem, right? So that gives us the information we need to then come back to them, with the brand, and that helps us create the copy for their website too.
So you guys are constantly doing marketing and communications for other people, but what techniques do you use for yourself to bring in new leads and prospects?
Oh, yeah. So I speak at a lot of conferences, and they're usually conferences that are very specific to industries that I want to work with, right? So I speak at the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs, because that's municipality, Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, that's municipalities, School Boards Association, I speak at their conference, speak at some of these these fire association conferences. And
are they bringing you in? Are they asking you to speak?
Yeah, they're asking me. Yeah, they're asking me to speak. And so I speak, people kind of, on the fire side, if people don't know me, I think they're like, who is this? I'm only like 5'3", this lady walking in, telling us what to do. But once I get started, they're like, oh, and they all start taking notes, right? And then they realize we can't really do this ourselves. We're busy, we're volunteers, for crying out loud. So then we typically get, we get the business that way. I don't go speak on a topic that I'm not comfortable talking about, right? So We do that. We speak. People, we inevitably get business from that. We write articles for industry publications. I mean, I pretty much practice what I tell my clients. So I have an article coming out in the Pennsylvania Fireman about a campaign. I have an article coming out in the Barrows magazine, Barrows News, about campaigns that we've run. So our target audience is reading these things. Then for the Chamber of Commerce, very active with the Chamber of Commerce. I really work the room quite well. I know that you cannot hold a glass of wine and food, because how are you going to shake hands with someone, right? It's one or the other. So figure it out. Do you want this wine, or are you really hungry? Because you need to be working the room and social, networking with people. And so we get other business that way. And I do speak at chamber events, and I exhibit at chamber events, and so that helps too.
So you started without a business plan. How many years has it been since you started?
34.
Now? 34 years.
Yeah,
So that's a long time.
Yeah.
So at this point, do you guys have plans for the future? Any changes to the business, or just keep it steady?
So we have a presence in Pittsburgh, because we have a full-time staff member in Pittsburgh, and we had really hyped up Pittsburgh when that person was hired, and that has enabled us to get more clients in Pittsburgh. We have a full-time employee that just moved to Texas, so now we're trying to kind of work that area. We have another team member that's in Ithaca, New York, and like I said, I go to Ithaca, New York quite a bit, because I teach classes every once in a while at Ithaca College, so that gives us a venue over there. So as we find different market areas, it seems I like to try and open doors in those areas.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. If someone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Well, our website is www.comsolutions.com, but I could give my phone number, because I've been doing this 34 years, so I'm still someone who's very comfortable on the phone. 215-884-6499. And they can ask for me. We're not like gigantic, so they could call, and we're all pretty much, in like shouting distance throughout the office. So
awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Leza. We have 2 more episodes coming up.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about precise target market and how to turn those into clients. So
Sure.
Identifying your audience, and then crisis communication for
okay,
clients.
great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Stories from the Top is your guide to successful business development. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or find Edge of Cinema on YouTube. Stories from the Top is an Edge of Cinema production, hosted by Matthew Skura and Jeremy Schmidt. To learn more or get in touch, visit edgeofcinema.com/podcast.